This episode starts with the Guardians, Thor, and the Milano on a comet. Thor congratulates the Guardians on their victory against the symbiotes. Drax replies that it was actually his victory, and Gamora agrees, saying that he single-handedly defeated the symbiotes on the comet. Quill protests, saying that he helped a little bit, to which Thor agrees and says that their wisdom in calling in Asgardian like him was what saved the day. With this, he calls out to Heimdall to open the Bifrost. Thor looks back and waves goodbye, but before he can leave, the symbiote's tendrils rise from the comet and start to wrap around him, causing him to fall to the Bifrost. Quill winces, complaining that they better not be blamed for this happening. Thor lands in Asgard, still struggling with the symbiote, and the Guardians soon fall through the Bifrost after him. Heimdall immediately blames them, asking what they've done to Thor. Drax immediately says that they have not done anything, but that it's the symbiote that is attacking him. Gamora tells Thor to use Mjolnir, since the hammer's lightning can destroy the symbiote. This turns out to be useless though, because the symbiote completely takes over Thor. He drops the hammer and Heimdall attacks him, sending him crashing into a wall. He then mentions that since Thor has been taken over by the symbiote, he's no longer worthy of Mjolnir and cannot use it. Symbiote Thor makes a hammer out of its tendrils and attacks Heimdall, moving toward the city. Quill looks at the scene and knows that the Guardians will take responsibility for what is happening. In the main city, Symbiote Thor easily fights off a bunch of Asgardian soldiers. He then walks towards Heimdall. Heimdall tries to reason with him, saying that he's a danger to both himself and others, but Symbiote Thor does not listen. He attacks Heimdall by smashing him into a wall. Just when he's about to attack him again, Symbiote Thor is hit with an electric shock and falls to his knees. The symbiote retreats from some of his body, and his face comes back into view. Turns out the shock was from an electric gun Rocket had made from trinkets he found lying around in Asgard. Thor says that the will of the symbiote is strong. He calls Mjolnir, but it doesn't even lift off the ground before Thor is overtaken by the symbiote again. Symbiote Thor throws Heimdall towards the Guardians. He then breaks through a large door. Quill says that Thor's heading for the World Tree. And Gamora adds that if he taps into the tree's energy, he could spawn many more symbiotes. As Symbiote Thor advances, Quill freezes him with his blaster, but he easily breaks out of the ice. He then defeats the Guardians. Heimdall insists that they get out of the way and let him fight Thor alone, but he's also defeated before he could even attack. Symbiote Thor reaches and mounts the World Tree and sprouts many symbiote spores. The spores start to spread symbiote particles in the air, which start to convert all of the Asgardians, including the ones defeated by Symbiote Thor, into symbiote creatures themselves. The symbiote creatures start heading for the Bifrost. Gamora warns that if they can get to the Bifrost, they'll be able to conquer the whole galaxy. The Guardians wonder how they will fight so many creatures when they couldn't even fight one of them, but Heimdall says they won't fight anyone. He continues that he alone will go and fight the symbiotes. He opens a door to the palace and instructs the Guardians to find and wake Odin up, since he is the only one who is powerful enough to fight all of the symbiotes. Drax and Groot protest, Drax saying that he's called the Destroyer, not the Awakener. Heimdall accepts taking them with him, but leaves Quill, Rocket, and Gamora to get Odin. Quill and the others enter the palace through the door entering the dungeon. They begin to run through the area past the empty cells, but soon they see the symbiote spores crawling through the hallway towards them. Quill starts to shoot at them with his blasters while Gamora fights them with her weapons. Rocket starts to fire at them, but his rifle begins to malfunction. They keep fighting back against the spores until eventually all of them combine into one large spider-like spore. It attacks Quill, but he dodges it and fires an electrical shock at it with his blaster, killing it. Loki, lying imprisoned in one of the cells, finally speaks up. Rocket calls him the Clown Prince of Asgard as a way to mock him. He mocks the Guardians back before Quill offers to break him out in return for helping defeat the symbiote. Loki doesn't accept, saying that he's innocent, but Quill recounts his many evil plans. Loki asks if they're implying that he deserves to be jailed, and Gamora says that they aren't just implying, but clearly stating it. Loki refuses their offer again, saying that he prefers to stay safe in his cell. Quill smirks and tells Rocket to break Loki out. Rocket rips out a panel in the wall and starts working on the circuits. At the Bifrost Bridge, Heimdall and the others get there to see the creatures already halfway across the bridge. Heimdall hopelessly says they are too late, but Groot grabs both him and Drax and uses his extendable limbs to launch them ahead of the creatures. They land on the bridge and start running to the end of the bridge to try to get there before the creatures. Back at the dungeons, Rocket gives up trying to break into Loki's cell since he can't rewrite the circuit. Finally, Quill gives in and asks Loki to at least tell them where to find Odin. He points towards the upper floor, and while Quill is initially confused, Gamora drags him up the stairs and Rocket follows. When they finally get to Odin's chambers, they can't find him. They find his eye patch. And just when they start to wonder where he is, Gamora notices a strand of symbiote fluid dripping from the ceiling. They look up to see Odin, already transformed into a symbiote creature, latched onto the ceiling and looking down at them. Symbiote Odin attacks them, but they dodge his attack. Quill shoots fire from his blasters to try and fight back, and Gamora fights with her sword. They can't get through them though, and Rocket's gun breaks down again. Quill fires another electric shock, which he thinks works, but it only slows symbiote Odin down for a second before he bounces back. Quill uses fire to break the floor beneath him, Gamora, and Rocket. They both crash down into the dungeon floor. Loki sees them crash down and Quill begs him to help them. He asks why they're asking if they found and woke Odin up. But before they can answer, symbiote Odin crashes down through the hole in the floor too. He starts to attack the Guardians, but Gamora uses a holographic shield to protect them temporarily. Seeing this, Loki accepts their pleas for him to help them, but adds that there is a condition. He says that he will only help them if after the fight, they convince Odin to forgive Loki's crimes and set him free. They agree in desperation, and Loki simply walks through the transparent wall of his cell. When Rocket is shocked by this, he reveals that he has the status of Godfather for now, since both Thor and Odin are corrupted. Loki steps out and his scepter and helmet appear. He uses the scepter to teleport himself and the other three Guardians to a ship far away from symbiote Odin. On the ship, they start flying toward the Bifrost to meet Heimdall, Drax, and Groot. On the way, Rocket says that he feels like Loki is scamming them, but Loki replies that he keeps his word, especially when it suits his purposes. He then taps the tip of his scepter on Quill's chest, which seems to make him, Rocket, and Gamora forget what they were talking about. Quill asks what they were talking about, but just then Drax calls Rocket to ask whether they had woken up Odin yet and were on their way. Meanwhile, Heimdall stands guard and Groot holds the doors to the end of the bridge closed to stop the symbiote creatures from getting in. Over the comms, Rocket, Quill, and Gamora reluctantly tell them that Odin has turned into a symbiote creature and that they are instead bringing Loki. Heimdall is shocked and angry at this. As Loki's ship flies over the bridge, the symbiote creatures pile up onto each other, and one of them impales the ship, sending it crashing near the end of the bridge. Gamora volunteers to fight off the symbiotes to buy time so the others can cross the rest of the bridge. Almost immediately, Quill turns around to see Gamora infected with the symbiote. She tries to attack him, but suddenly Drax appears with lightning-infused weapons. He tells the rest of them to run into Heimdall's post, where the others are, and stays behind to fight the symbiotes. They all run into the interior, but just as Groot and Quill are about to close the doors, someone stops them from closing them. Drax, now a symbiote creature, tries to push through, but Groot punches him, sending him flying backwards, and closes the door. Rocket says that they have to save and cure Drax and Gamora. He looks at Loki and commandingly asks if he'll help. Heimdall draws his sword and brings it to Loki's neck. Loki cunningly says that they should trust each other if they want to survive. Heimdall seems to agree and lowers his sword, but Loki suddenly fires from his scepter at Heimdall, sending him flying into the wall. He takes his sword while Quill and Rocket watch and tells them how he plans to use the sword to send the symbiote creatures to Midgard. Quill doesn't realize that Midgard is Earth and is initially relieved, but quickly becomes shocked when he remembers. Rocket confirms that this is all for Loki to ultimately rule over Asgard, and while Loki gloats and laughs, Quill attacks him and knocks him away. He then takes the sword out of its slot and closes the portal that Loki has opened to Earth. Quill shouts that nobody messes with Earth, but Loki immediately shoots him with his scepter. Groot uses an extendable arm and grabs Loki, while Rocket still struggles to get his gun's batteries to work. Rocket trips over Thor's hammer, still in the room from when he came to Asgard through the Bifrost, which gives him an idea to use it as a battery for his gun. Outside, Symbiote Odin runs across the Bifrost Bridge and starts slamming against the doors. To Heimdall's station, Groot struggles to keep the doors closed while also holding Loki. Quill struggles with Loki for his scepter and Heimdall slowly starts to regain consciousness. Rocket starts to hook up his gun with the hammer. Heimdall yells at him to stop it, but Quill says that they have bigger problems. Loki uses the scepter to get free of Groot's grip and orders Heimdall, as King of Asgard, to banish the Guardians from Asgard. Heimdall instead helps them by giving Rocket his sword. He tells them to use it as a conductor for his lightning gun. At that moment, Symbiote Odin breaks through the doors. Rocket's gun finally works and he shoots an incredibly powerful ray of lightning at the World Tree, which allows Thor to break free. He calls Mjolnir, dragging Rocket and his gun along with it. Then Rocket climbs on Thor's back as he flies towards Heimdall's station, charging up with the lightning. At the station, the creatures surround Heimdall and the others, when Thor crashes in and uses his lightning to transform Odin back to his normal self. He tells Odin about the symbiote infestation and asks him to heal his people. Odin uses his Odin Force, unleashing a huge wave of energy that spreads across Asgard and heals everyone in its path. It also heals the World Tree and removes all presence of the symbiote from the realm. Afterward, Loki is caught by Thor and brought before Odin. He condemns Loki and praises Heimdall and the Guardians. He declares them friends of Asgard and offers a wish to be granted. Quill gets overtaken by a spell put on him by Loki and asks for him to be freed. Odin realizes what Loki did but has no choice but to honor the wish and lets him go. Later on, Rocket criticizes Quill's wish, saying that he should have asked for money instead. Thor asks Rocket whether there's anything they can do to make him feel better. Hearing this, Rocket gets an idea and soon gets to ride on Mjolnir, mid-flight. The end. Thank you so much for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe. We'll see you in the next episode.